Today we're going to be installing this bung in our oil pan. What this is, it's an oil return feed line for the turbo. If you're going to have a turbo on your car, there's an oil line that runs to the turbo, it runs through the turbo bearing, and then it runs back into the oil pan. So that's what this is going to do for us. As far as your options go, you can either buy an oil pan with one of these fittings already in it, or you can drill a hole and install one of these. This fitting here is a non-welded one. So what I'm going to do is, after I drill the hole, you can see that it unscrews like this. It has these two washers. Basically there'll be one on the inside and one on the outside of the oil pan, and then we'll tighten it down, and hopefully we don't have any leaks or anything like that. The other option for bungs is there's a weldable type, pretty much the same type of deal. You drill a hole, you put it in there, and then at that point you have to weld it to the pan. I didn't want to have to weld, so I went with this. So it's probably difficult to see on the video, but I put a line of right where I want the bottom of this to be, and then I'm just going to try to kind of scratch in a rough idea of where I want it. And then to help me actually drill it where I want to, I'm going to use this screwdriver and just make a little dent. Punch would work pretty good for this. So I have one of these tapered bits that I'm going to use. When I get close to where I think I need to be on this drill bit as far as the width for the hole, I'll start checking the bung. I'll drill it until it goes up a layer, and then I'll check the bung. If it fits, then I'll stop. But I'll just keep doing that until I get to the right size. So I got the hole drilled, and I actually kind of wish I would have scooted it back just a little bit. I'm starting to get into the curved area right here, and the way this is going to work with those gaskets, I'm not sure it's going to work real great. The other issue that I'm kind of having, I don't know if you can see from this angle, there's a windage tray in here in the oil pan, and where I drilled the hole, it's just kind of below that, but it's a little bit in the way, so I'm probably gonna have to cut that out somehow or bend it or something. All right, folks, so I have a couple little problems with this. The first one was what I mentioned before, where this hole is. I'm starting to get down where the curvature is here, and honestly it's not that big of a deal on the outside, but on the inside I'm not going to be able to get that washer there. But the even bigger problem is on the inside of this oil pan. I'm trying to get this where you can see, but this windage tray, it creates, well, first of all, I'd have to cut, I already cut a little bit of this out just to be able to put the bung in. I'd have to cut this out further if I wanted to use the inside washer. And even after I cut this section out on here, the part that fits up against the side wall of the oil pan creates a surface that is not flat. So if the surface isn't flat, I don't think that gasket is going to do anything. It's not going to seal, and I'm going to have an oil leak. So if you are wanting to use one of these bungs that you just screw on, you're going to have to pick your spot where you install it very carefully. Fortunately, I do still have a potential solution, and that is to simply weld this bung on. Now, it's not a weldable one, but I don't see why it wouldn't weld. I think I can still try it. So I think I'm going to give that a try and see what happens. So I did a tiny tack weld on this thing to hold it still. Now, I don't have any problems with the weldable bungs or anything. I think that's actually an ideal way to go. The issue I have is that I don't have a welder, or at least I don't have a decent welder. I have a cheap, crappy Harbor Freight, you know, $100 welder. Unless the metal's very, very thin, like I'm talking paper thin, it's just not very reliable. So I'm gonna give this a shot. I'll weld a little bit and see how it looks. I'll keep my fingers crossed that this might work. So what we got here is the welded bung. And I know I said that my welder's crappy. I should also mention that I'm a pretty poor welder, so the combination doesn't look good. And what I did is I took my oil pan and just filled it up with water, just enough to cover the bung to see if I got any leaks, and there are a few leaks. You can see that it's got a few little drips coming out. So what I'll just have to do is just clean up that weld a little bit and try to place another bead around it that hopefully is a little bit better than that one. Honestly, my biggest concern about doing this was that I was just going to burn holes through the pan because it was a lot thinner of metal than the actual adapter itself. I'll go ahead and weld it a little bit more and see if I can get it completely sealed up. So I went ahead and added a second application of weld around this thing. It looks like I welded it around it about 5 times as thick as that crap is, but I didn't want it to leak, and it's not, so that's good. As you can see, once again, I got water in the pan and it's up past the top of this, so it's not leaking. Honestly, that welder did a little bit better than I thought as far as penetrating. That was kind of my main concern with that thing, but I think this thing is going to be plenty sturdy. One downside to that welder, you can see all this splatter here. Well, it also got on the threads a little bit, so I'll have to clean those up once I get a fitting for that. But now that that's installed, this pan is basically ready to go back on. I do need to get a new gasket, but once I get that, I should be able to just slap that back on. So that's it for this video. I got the bung in, it's ready to go. It didn't go quite like I planned, but I've kind of realized now working with cars that it very rarely goes as I planned. But you just got to be a little creative and willing to do whatever you can to get the job done. On the next video, I'm going to be working on this cross member here. I need to do some welding on it, also getting it situated so that I can fit the turbo in the car. If you want to see that or any of the other videos that I'm doing, just click my logo to subscribe, and as always, thanks for watching.